Hi and welcome to the Philosopher's Games and a new episode of Once Upon a Time in Games. E3 is still going and I have only covered 3 conferences so far, so let's start with Ubisoft. They had a few surprises. First of all, this strange Mario and Rabbits game. It's a turn-based tactical combat game. Basically, it's a Disgaea XCOM hybrid with Mario and friends plus rabbits dressing up as Mario and friends. It has some interesting mechanics like a cover system and this jump ability that gives you some interesting positioning options and allows some combos. I think you find that mechanic in Disgaea 5 too. It's not what I expected and it looks competent, so I'm positively surprised. It's also a Switch exclusive and developed by Ubisoft, which is unusual for a Mario game. Then, as mentioned in my Microsoft summary video, they showed us Assassin's Creed Origins. The ancient Egypt setting looks interesting. I think not many games these days use it. Ubisoft said they improved combat, gave it more depth and they added RPG elements to it, which is very popular for open world games right now. I hope they really improved the combat. It also seems they borrowed some elements from their other games. The ability to use the bird's vision, for example, was also used in Far Cry Primal. So Assassin's Creed Origins is not something totally innovative, but it could be competent, and if story and characters are well designed too, then this could be well received and the break for the franchise could work out. But in the end, it will be an Assassin's Creed game. Don't expect something totally new. Same with Far Cry 5. It has co-op, the shown trailer seems way less serious than the earlier trailers, and you have a dog and some NPCs that seem to fight with you, which could be interesting, but it is still Far Cry. They showed The Crew 2 and it now has boats and planes. That is a really interesting addition and gives something not many games give the player. The question is, does anyone have asked for this? It actually reminded me of Steep, which they also showed. For that they announced a Winter Olympic Disciplines expansion, which is I think a very interesting addition too, and it probably has not much competition right now. I remember a time when snowboarding games were very popular. This could maybe fill that niche in some way. Then they showed the new South Park game again. It will most likely release this time at the 17th of October 2017. Still looks like fun and I would be surprised if this does not sell well. Then they showed the strange VR game called Transference. No clue what it is. Maybe a FMV VR game thing. Could be interesting and it's developed by Elijah Wood's company. He also appears in it. And now our first surprise. Skull and Bones, a multiplayer pirate game with co-op and PvP. It's pretty much the ship combat from Assassin's Creed Black Flag, just improved and put into a standalone game. Trailer looked amazing, but people were a bit disappointed that it's multiplayer, but we can read in the video description of one of the official videos, play solo or co-op, raid the hunting grounds alone or group with other players to hunt larger prey. So there is co-op and single-player stuff in it, which is great. It seems to be a more realistic approach if you compare it to Sea of Thieves, so I can see them coexisting. I can imagine that it works like The Division, where you have PvE and PvP content, but we need more information about this. Then another new IP, Starlink Battle for Atlas, a multiplayer space fighting game where you have to upgrade your ship with toys that physically exist. You can add those toys to your toy ship and they have different effects and elements in the game then. When I understand it correctly, you can also get things digitally, but either way it sounds expensive. It could mean paid weapon upgrades, which is not great, especially in a game you already have to pay for. We need some more information on this. The game looks interesting, but I don't like that toy part of it. It will also release for the Switch. And the big announcement or confirmation, Beyond Good and Evil 2. We saw this amazing CGI trailer, but no gameplay. It's a special game and the art design really caught me. I'm interested in hearing more of it, but we don't know what you will do actually in the game and how it plays. Let's move to Sony and then talk really quick about Nintendo, because I can show footage anyway. Sony showed us more of what we already knew, but had some surprises too. First, they showed the Uncharted expansion Lost Legacy. I think it was originally planned as a DLC, but is now a standalone. Nice to see 2 female protagonists in a game. Not many games do that. It's more Uncharted and seems to have the same quality as Uncharted 4 when it comes to graphics and animation. We will see how long it is and how it does gameplay-wise. Horizon Zero Dawn also gets a DLC called Frozen Wilds, could expand on the story. Then we have Days Gone gameplay. This time they showed us some stealth and the use of traps, but also a giant zombie bear, and the game seems to be open world. If you look at this scene, it looks a bit scripted. Of course, this could be just for the presentation. If it's open world, can I drive elsewhere and approach this camp from the other side, or do I drive to that location and then the cutscene triggers? Or was it created this way just for the presentation? Many questions, but I have no answers. The game implies a lot of freedom, but also seems to be linear and limited in some ways when it comes to where you can go. I'm not fully convinced. Also, a big surprise was that Monster Hunter game. When I saw it, I thought, is this Monster Hunter? But somehow it looks different, so it is some kind of Monster Hunter spin-off, and it will release for Xbox One too, and also for PC, which is amazing. Still, some iconic Monster Hunter elements seem to be not there. I hope they show more. And another surprise, Shadow of the Colossus, I assume a remaster. It's very strange that they made this, because there's already an HD remaster for it, but of course it was for the PlayStation 3. It looks a bit different, but why not? It is still a beautiful game. Then we got to see some story stuff of the new Marvel vs. Capcom game, and they showed a new trailer for Call of Duty World War II. Not much to say about it, same with the VR section. They showed new titles, several of them looked interesting, but I don't know why some of them need VR at all. Of course, games like The Impatient profit from it, but games like Moss or Starchild don't look like they need it. And finally, more of the new God of War. They focused a bit on story and it looks good, but the camera is a bit close in combat for my taste. And I say that as a Dark Souls player. You probably get used to it, but it's very different from the old games. I hope they show more combat. I'm curious what Kratos can really do in this game. So far I'm missing a bit of depth and it seems very grounded. The combat in the old games was so over the top, a lot faster. You could do ridiculous long combos and launch enemies into the air. I hope we get that later in the game back, but maybe it's not a spectacle fighter anymore. After that, they showed us more of Detroit Become Human. It looks visually very impressive. The only unknown factor is of course David Cage. I'm not the hugest fan of his games and his stories. I usually like them at first, but always stop playing them at some point. This time, it's a genre of fiction I personally like a lot. Science fiction, that is. But I'm also a player who loves game mechanics, and those are usually quite weak in his games. Also, he sometimes builds in very strange twists. But still, I have to say it looks interesting, and this freedom of choice and this no game over screen concept is something I like too. But I fundamentally disagree that a game over screen is a failure in game design. This is absolutely not true. But that's another topic and not E3 related. After that, they showed Destiny 2. This time it's multi-platform. I haven't played the first one, but even though it was very successful, there are a lot of complaints about it, and it seems they got addressed to some degree in Destiny 2. And the last game. It was really fun to watch, the new Spider-Man. The problem I had with the presentation was that it included many QuickTime events, and every time I asked myself, what happens if you don't press that button? Will this falling crane kill the people walking over the streets otherwise? Does this affect maybe some kind of reputation system? Or do we get a game over screen, which would be the worst? Or it doesn't matter at all? I think Spider-Man games always have one problem. The hero has so many degrees of freedom and can easily break boundaries of your game. If you limit those, it feels off. If you allow them, you end up in a lot of trouble when you want something to get done. So basically, Spider-Man should be as free as, for example, Link in Zelda Breath of the Wild, but on the other side you have this strong narrative to progress in the story. So Spider-Man needs to be sometimes on rails, but this can destroy the illusion of freedom. The demo created many questions in that regard. You are a dude who can pretty much go everywhere, and you can fly as long as there are high buildings around. These abilities destroy classical level limitations, but in a narrative-driven game you need those if you don't design your storytelling around that freedom. Here it was the other way around, it seems. First the story, then the degrees of freedom. And for me, that always destroys this illusion if I have to do missions. I'm a player who likes trying things out and not do what the game tells me to do. Why can't I just go straight to that helicopter if I know the mission? What happens if I let it fly away or connect it directly to the building? You know what I mean. I know it's a problem and almost impossible to resolve, but I hope that it's not too much on rails and that they don't use too many QuickTime events, because those are often very limiting and binary, especially those where if you fail once or twice you see a game over screen, or those where you ask yourself, why can't I do a different action here? And that wraps up Sony. Let's have a quick look at Nintendo. As mentioned, I can show footage because Nintendo. I was wrong. They announced a new Metroid for the Switch casually by just showing a 4 and the words Metroid Prime. So no gameplay, no nothing. It was just there will be a new Metroid. And I'm happy we know it's definitely in development. There will be also a Metroid 2 remake for the 3DS. And another thing they announced casually, like in 2 sentences, the Switch will get a mainline Pokémon RPG and Game Freak is working on it right now. Well, that is huge, because there are no such Pokémon games for Nintendo home consoles. Then they also showed a lot of gameplay for the new Super Mario Odyssey, and it looks great and seems to have a lot of gameplay variety. They revealed that he can control or become certain enemies when he throws his head on them. It's really impressive how that simple gameplay mechanic is bringing so much to the game. They showed how you can become all kind of things, even a dinosaur. Just showing this mechanic, that is not a cutscene or anything, creates fun in the heads of the players. Even before he plays this, in my opinion, games that manage this are usually incredibly successful. Minecraft is a good example for this, also Mario Maker. Nintendo is really good at this, and this game looks, even though it's one of many Mario games, very fresh. At the end, some honorable mentions. Watch the Devolver Digital Conference, it's actually funny. The PC Gaming Conference also had tons of interesting games. At the end, they dropped Age of Empires, and it turns out it's Age of Empires 1 Remaster. Thanks Microsoft. Some rumors say they maybe announce something more satisfying at Gamescom. I hope so, the world needs a new Age of Empires. They also showed Mount & Blade Bannerlord. As many people, I really want to play this. A Lord of the Rings mod like for Mount & Blade Warband would be also amazing, but we will see if we get one. And they showed a new XCOM 2 expansion, which could be very interesting. I think XCOM 2 was at launch very buggy, but right now all of this should be fixed and this could be a very enjoyable expansion. So that's my summary of E3 2017. Looking forward to catch up with all the Shadow of War things they were showing at E3, so maybe I do another video on this, but no promise. If you are interested in more Lord of the Rings lore, check my lore content. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, consider the YouTube and Twitter things. Thank you for watching and goodbye.